Hi, I'm Jeff Passero from the band Possessed. In 1983, I coined the term death metal and created the first death metal band.
Hello guys, my name is Rock and Roll Snaggletooth. We are going to be doing a retrospective on the legendary death metal band that pretty much pioneered it and started it, Possessed. Now, it was started by Jeff Becerra, Mike Torreo, there's two other people I'm missing, Larry Lano and Mike Suss. They went on to do a legendary demo in 1994, the death metal demo, and they then later on got signed to Combat Records, which made the first Possessed album.
The conversation went something like this: let's create the fucking heaviest, most satanic, fastest, most evil band on the planet. So right off the start, right from the get-go, we just wanted to create the heaviest music that we possibly could, like in the world, and something that represented what we wanted to hear rather than what was being kind of sold as metal back then.
This album, in my opinion, is obviously their classic that everybody knows. If you're a death metal fan and you do not know this album, you are fucking up. You are literally fucking up. Like, okay, this is an album that pretty much started it, in my opinion, and probably 50% would agree with me. Maybe 50% would say Screenplay Gore, but in my opinion, it's Seven Churches. Now, every track on here kicks ass beginning to end. My favorite is Satan's Curse, Fallen Angel, The Exorcist. That's how, actually, funny fact, is how I found out about The Exorcist, through this song. I was never a fan of horror until I heard this song and figured out that was an intro to the movie. But The Exorcist is a great track. The song Death Metal, Evil Warriors, like, all the riffs on here are great albums. I mean, if we didn't have this, we wouldn't have Death, Obituary, Deicide, Morbid Angel. We wouldn't have a lot of those classics albums without this. So, this is a landmark in the death metal staple, in my opinion. This was recorded at Randy Burns, who, not Scott Burns' brother, obviously. He recorded Dark Angel, Darkness Descends, Death, Scream, Bloody Gore, the first Megadeth album. He recorded this, and I believe it took them 2 weeks to record. And keep in mind, they were like 16 or 17 when they recorded this album. And it's pretty impressive to think they were that young when they recorded it. Then after this album, they did a few tours with Dark Angel. They did a few shows with Possessed, and a few others with Razor and Voivod. And this album was a hot seller on Combat at the time for 1985. Which brings us on to the second album, Beyond the Gates.
Bound to the altar, I'm bound to my fate, guard my destiny, with this grave.
Beyond the Gates is, people have mixed opinions about this one. I think it's a great album coming off the heels of Seven Churches. Some people think it's shit because of the production. I mean, for me, as how I am, I don't really give a shit of that much about production, as long as the music is good and still has a good punch. It's like, okay, there's people that can bitch and complain about production all the times and how it's mixed. As long as it's listenable, then it's good. I think there's great tracks on here, like Beyond the Gates, The Heretic, and I think this album has a lot more to offer. And then a year later, Possessed made an EP called The Eyes of Horror, produced by the legendary guitarist Joe Satriani. And then they have one re-recorded track of Swing of the Axe, which is on the 1984 demo, which I don't understand, which should have been on the first album, but obviously they re-recorded later, but whatever. The EP is fucking awesome. It's probably like one of my favorite death metal EPs ever. You disagree and argue. And then the band broke up in 87 due to the fact that they weren't getting enough money to pay for touring and whatnot, and Combat was kind of losing interest in them. And then the band broke up. Then they reunited to 91 to 93, and they only made like 2 demos. If you wanted to go check them out, they're probably on YouTube. But yeah. And then they reunited back in 2007. We finally waited for 33 years for the third Possessed album to come out. And that brings us to Revelations of the fucking Oblivion.
When there's no more room in hell to let you walk this earth, when there's no one left to tell.
Now, Revelations of Oblivion, I remember when Possessed was getting signed to Nuclear Blast back in 2018. They were on the Death is Coming compilation, I think it's called. It's what Nuclear Blast does like every few years or so, where they put like a few bands on a compilation that's on their label. Obviously, you guys know what compilation is. I'm not going to go and explain that to you. But when I heard Abandon, I was immediately thinking, this is not going to be a weak comeback album. Because there's bands out there, when they make comeback albums, it's not as good as people expect it to be. And there's some that are great, and there's some that go completely wrong. This album, in my opinion, this brings me back to Seven Churches, and to be honest, this album I love. It's probably like one of my favorite albums of 2019, point blank. I mean, they do, like, the souls on here are fucking amazing. The riffs, everything about this is a great album. In my opinion, this is one of the top albums of 2019. And if you guys don't know or not sure, I have a video of my top albums of 2019, and this is on the list. Like, this is a must-have, and every song on here is great. The artwork is great. It's not your typical Nuclear Blast record where it has that kind of typical power metal tone, but this is pure. This is how it should be when it comes to producing death metal bands on Nuclear Blast. And I hope to hear more from Possessed, and not just these 3 albums, but this is amazing. I am Rock and Roll Snaggletooth, and I am signing off. Stay fucking metal, and this is a retrospective on Possessed.